Greetings, brothers and sisters. So, I didn't see this sketch when I covered Saturday Night Live, I don't know, yesterday or the day before. But this one is even more of what I was talking about in terms of not knowing the subject you're making fun of. To correctly crap on somebody or mock them, you have to understand them and know them. You have to be honest about who the person is or what the, construct is to really make it funny. But if you try to mock somebody based in your diluted version of them, do you understand this? Where you make up what the person is, but it's really what you are because you're making it up inside yourself. It's a large distinction. Like, you have to really know something to make fun of it. You have to have it inside of you, and then you have to find humor in that, what you know about that thing. But when you make up a version of somebody else or something else, and it's not accurate, then it's not funny, and you're really just making fun of yourself because it's something you've created. You're not really making fun of the other person or the movement. And so they did this here. And so the cold open, which is supposed to be the funniest part of Saturday Night Live, it is the part where you're going to buy into the show. It's the best sketch that they've come up with. It's a sketch that everybody's been waiting for. And every sketch after it is probably going to be not as funny, at least in terms of the interpretation of the writers and the cast of characters. This is their big sort of, it's the cold open. I've talked about this before. Kate McKinnon is not funny. She's weird. She's strange. And they've tried to market that strange as being funny, and it's, not, right? And she plays like an NPR type of host on a fictitious show called What Still Works, looking for something in the American system that still works. And she starts off with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I've talked about, who I don't like. She's a QB, and she's doing damage and hurting all of us, right? People who have different narratives than the mainstream narrative. And she's being used the same way as AOC is used by the right to demonize a whole group of people. Like, everybody who doesn't accept the official story or narrative is now a QAnon, QB, Marjorie Taylor Greene type, right? All the people who are, so-called conspiracy theorists or whatever word you want to use, truthers, are being demonized by, people like her.
What are some of the theories you believe in and have been promoting?
First off, I believe the Parkland shooting was a hoax. The teachers were actors and the children were dolls. I believe 9/11 was a hoax. Did anyone actually see it happen?
So here's what makes this wrong. Again, that when you're doing political comedy, you're supposed to be on the side of the little man, not the side of the beast, not the side of the king, not the side of the ruling class. My dog is, you can hear that, is itching himself, and he's, his collar. So I've been talking a lot about obscurantism in recent videos. It's a word used in the Whispers of a Brighter World messages that are from the Heartfulness System. It's a great word that means the practice of deliberately preventing the facts or full details of something from becoming known. And the way it's used in the Heartfulness System is to talk about the people who run the world, the people I call the controllers, putting out disinformation, putting out lies, or just withholding information, the truth, from people, from all of us, about the true origin of our species, the true nature of things. I mean, lots of information that's being withheld, which we know, and we all know about that, right? Because that's what the White House press corps is supposed to be about. They would ask questions, like they did this with Trump, and they used to do it with all presidents. They're not really doing it with Biden now. At least most of the media isn't doing it with Biden. But what they're supposed to do is get beyond the so-called official story, which is often a cover story, right? There's a word for it, a term, which is called cover story, which is a fake story that is given, by, in this case, like the administration, the White House to cover up something or withhold information, which happens all the time. I've been talking about how in TV shows and movies, let's say an asteroid or something's going to hit the Earth, or aliens are going to invade, or just aliens in general, that there's this thought that the government is withholding information. They call it classified. It's a matter of national security. You see this in movie after movie, something like E.T., a kid's movie, where the government's going to take E.T. away, right, and dissect him and study him and all these things, and not tell the public that they have an alien. Like, that's just one of many examples. And if there's a natural disaster or something that's going to happen that they think is going to cause panic, they don't tell the people. Or it could be any number of scandals and things, and they got to get their story straight, and they come out and lie to the American people, lie to the world. The world governments do this. Everybody knows this. People have moved to the internets where ordinary people do research and give their opinions other than the official story and narrative. And people might get it wrong. I mean, people are going to get it wrong, but it's, probably in most cases more accurate than the lies that were given by the mainstream media and the government and the powers that be, And so a growing number of people, 50% of Americans in the case of the second example, this fictional rendition of Marjorie Taylor Greene gave, don't believe in the official story. They don't believe in the official story about the JFK assassination, more than half the people in America. But Saturday Night Live is making up a fictional version of Marjorie Taylor Greene, who isn't like, she's doing damage to us. Like, I don't want her speaking for me and representing me. She's a QB and a nightmare. But this character they've created is clearly not a good representation of what Marjorie Taylor Greene actually believes. They're making up things to make it sound ridiculous, and they're demonizing all of us and pathologizing all of us who don't believe in the official story by doing this, crappy comedy hit piece sketch. Marjorie Taylor Greene character here, it's got a southern accent, which is, they're trying to make her look like a dumb hick, and people who are southern aren't as smart and as sophisticated as these New York comedians on Saturday Night Live, right? And she believes these crazy things, and all these people that believe in these crazy things, like we're all QBs and we're all whatever, Marjorie Taylor Greene, anybody who doesn't believe in the official story, like we're all messed up, right? And these great, smart, brilliant comedians that can't put on a funny sketch and don't know how to write a joke, right, are somehow better than us all. With this unfunny Kate McKinnon leading the way in this horrible sketch that isn't funny and is a hit piece, not on the power that be, not talking truth to power, but hit piece on average people who are actually just trying to look for the truth and are tired of being lied to by the government. And that's how bad Saturday Night Live is, and it gets worse. So Pete Davidson, because of his spectacular, year in 2019, the year of the ghoul, he just stood out amongst the Hollywood ghouls and the celebrities, right? He just stood out. And now he's a big-time star on Saturday Night Live, and he represents the, people at GameStop, the people who bought GameStop stock. And this is about, does the stock market work, right?
Okay, thanks for coming. So government doesn't work. Now let's take a look at the stock market.
So this sketch is based in a fictional show called Does It Work? And so the first bit was about how Marjorie Taylor Greene is displaying how the government doesn't work. Not that Joe Biden would do that, even though he's a career politician and he can barely finish a sentence. They wouldn't cover that on Saturday Night Live, right? And so now they're using the Reddit people to show you how the stock market doesn't work.
Yeah, hell yeah, it works. See, I told you, I put all my money in GameStop, and I can't lose.
So, again, well, let's just watch this play out here.
Normally a stock price reflects a company's value, right?
Okay.
And 2 weeks ago, GameStop was valued at $17 a share, and then it went to $413 a share.
The reason it was $17 a share was hedge funders were shorting the crap out of it and driving it down. Now it is, a failing business because people are buying games online. I think everybody knows that. It's a failed business model, but still it was devalued. The stock was devalued by the hedge funders who are driving it down. And she doesn't talk about that here. She's going after the little guy, right?
Right, so your price should have gone
Down?
but instead it went.
Up the most?
So now it seems like.
The entire system is a joke?
GameStop was going to be destroyed by the hedge funders. Hedge funders destroy businesses all the time. They look at a business that, isn't doing well, and then they short it, and they have massive buying power. Sometimes they short like 130% of the stock, which is going to make the stock go down, and they're betting that it's going to go down. And so they're going to make money by literally making it go down. So they were trying to make GameStop go from $17 to $4 by shorting it. And so what happened was a bunch of people on the internet decided to say, hey, let's drive this price up. And now they were locked in to buy it either way, because they would have bought it at $4, right? And it would have been, they would have made a lot of money. But because they're rigging the system, and they have done for years, and when they drive a stock down, it hurts the, other stockholders, people who have purchased the stock, or employees that have stock options, or whatever it is, ordinary people, and the market itself and the business. They can drive something to go completely out of business by devaluing the stock, colluding to devaluing the stock, which should be illegal. They shouldn't allow anybody to short anything. It's not good for business. It's just a way of cheating people out of their money. And so these hedge funders got rolled by ordinary people on Reddit. And instead of, saying, okay, let's get rid of the, all the loopholes that hedge funders are using, which would destroy the economy, by the way. Like, I'm not for that, even though I think it's right. It would literally destroy the economy, and I'll talk about that in some other video. I mean, that's the sad part of this story. But instead of backing these Reddit people, these individuals that came together to game the hedge funders, beat them at their own game, they're going after the little guy. Like I said, this is such a huge part of Saturday Night Live. It's supposed to be about defending the little guy and talking truth to power, because comedians can get away with that. But instead, they keep on doubling down and backing the beast in one unfunny sketch after another that's just full of hit pieces. And, to make things worse, they then go and back big tech.
Our best and brightest. So guys, you've had to suspend the accounts of many prominent conservatives who were spreading lies and inciting violence. How did that go?
Again, that's not an accurate description of what happened. Right? What happened was, I have said over and over again, I don't have a problem with these big tech firms banning and blocking people because they're private businesses. The thing I have a problem with is when you put out rules that are not followed universally. When you have something, of course, they've used all of us, they've used the populace to build their empires. They've used people on the right and the left. They've cultivated relationships for years with people on the right and the Republicans and truthers and people who are, they've promoted all this kind of stuff. They've allowed people to post these things. So when they were creating these social media giants, they didn't come out and say, look, people who are Republicans and on the right-wing side of things and people who believe in alternative narratives to the official story, we're allowing you to be here, but at a later date, we don't believe in what you believe in. We think you're wrong, and we're going to block and censor you after you help build our platform. Like, they didn't say any of those things. In fact, if you watch whatever that name of that Netflix show about social media and all these social media people who worked within the industry at high-ranking positions, talked about how the system the algorithms in the system would identify what kind of person you were and find stories that you would like to keep you engaged in their platform. And they didn't care what the stories were, how extreme the stories were, or what you believed. They just wanted you to be on the platform. And that's how it started. And then all of a sudden they were pressured by the powers that be. Instead of imposing these rules on all groups, like they don't impose these rules on liberals and Democrats the same way as they pose them on conservatives, which is just unfair business practices. And it is getting rid of a whole group of people's ability to express themselves, which isn't cool.
Not well. It seems to have forced those people onto darker, scarier apps where their delusion and bloodlust can run wild.
Which again isn't an accurate description, but Saturday Night Live is taking up for Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg. Like, think about that, right? Because these online giants who are, aren't cool companies, right, are doing bad things. And when you censor a whole group of people and you treat them unfairly, like many of the people who are, being censored haven't done any of the things that they just said they did on this Saturday Night Live sketch. They're people who just believe in alternative views, alternative narratives that are against the obscurantism, are against the cover stories that are given by the media and the government that are clearly lies, right? Their crime is that they don't believe in the official story. And so they've done 2 hit pieces here, really 3 hit pieces on people on the internet. They're saying, again, the name of the show is What Still Works. And they're saying that the internet doesn't work because, first of all, crazy people like Marjorie Taylor Greene who are putting out information that differs from the official story. And they're violent, crazy, dumb people that shouldn't be able to express themselves in such a way and shouldn't be elected to the government because they don't believe in the official story and they say things that don't go along with the powers that be, the beast, the man. And then people in the stock market, and then these individuals who ventured into the stock market and figured out a loophole, a way to beat the evil hedge funders at their own game. And so now the stock market's broken. The government's broken because individuals who don't believe in the official story are elected officials. And the stock market's broken because people who are not billionaire hedge fund managers are playing the system the same way they are. And the internet's broken. Social media's broken because people are expressing views that are outside the mainstream narrative. And that's Saturday Night Live in this completely unfunny sketch is demonizing all these people, right?
You're supposed to win football games and you just keep winning football games.
Yeah.
You might be the only thing in America that still works.
Yeah.
Tom Brady, they're saying, is the only thing in America that still works. Now, if you saw the game between the Green Bay Packers, I was going to make a video about this, but I didn't have enough time, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it seemed like there was cheating going on. In terms of the secondary of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, if you don't understand football, there are wide receivers and tight ends and things, people who catch the passes thrown by the quarterbacks, right, Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. The secondary can only have physical contact within the first 5 yards off the line of scrimmage when the ball is hiked. But if they grab and maul and hold on to the receivers and they mess up the timing of the plays and the routes and they're better able to cover, you can imagine if somebody's trying to run by you and you can, sort of put your hands on them for a second, but then they can just blow by you, and these are people with world-class speed. If you are able to grab them, right, if you're able to hold them and maul them and things like that, it represents a really disadvantage, an unfair advantage for the defense and a disadvantage for the offense. And if you only allow one team to do that, the other team can't hold and grab in these things, then there's a problem. The other way you can rig a game is allow the offensive line to hold and grab and things like this. So they can't put pressure on the defense can't put pressure on the quarterback. That's the way to rig a football game. And the Patriots, the first Super Bowl Tom Brady won, they were playing the St. Louis Rams, I believe. I think they were St. Louis Rams back then. And they had what was called the greatest show on turf. They had one of the most prolific offenses in NFL history. But Bill Belichick had his secondary maul and grab and hold the receivers, and it caused an unfair advantage to where the Patriots sort of won a Super Bowl they didn't deserve to win. And it seemed like the same thing happened in that game with Green Bay. You know, if you watch, even the announcers were talking about it, the way that they were manhandling the receivers and was messing up the Packers' offense. It seemed like it was, rigged so Tom Brady would win. And she's coming out and saying, that Tom Brady is the only thing that works. But it appears that they're rigging it for Tom Brady. I don't know why they're doing it, but we'll see what happens in the Super Bowl. But certainly the viewership will be up and all these things will happen because of Tom Brady being back in the Super Bowl that are good for football, good for the Super Bowl. And if he wins, he wins. He loses, doesn't matter. But it seemed like he got there under a rigged type of situation. So then there's this guy talking about this guy.
Senator Rand Paul, who looks like Kevin Spacey playing an elderly woman.
Now, this is not why I'm including this in there's worse stuff coming. But this guy, Colin Jost, right? And, we're talking about liberals here who calling a man looking like a woman would be offensive to the liberal mindset, right? The cancel culture. Somehow he's getting away with that. But he's just saying that Rand Paul looks like Kevin Spacey playing a woman. And that's, a not funny joke. But Colin Jost is got a very sort of unmanly voice. And he has, effeminate features, right? And his inability to self-perceive, like he's trying to make fun of Rand Paul for saying he looks like a woman. But Colin Jost is effeminate male himself, right? And I wouldn't point that out. I don't care. But like his inability to self-perceive, right? He's making fun of Rand Paul for something that he himself possesses.
Introduced a motion this week saying that the second impeachment of Donald Trump was unconstitutional.
So what he's about to say is so messed up. But it's either constitutional or it's not, right? But that's not how he views this thing. Let's watch what he says here.
It's times like this that I think it's important that we as a country remember that Rand Paul got his ass kicked by his neighbor while he was mowing his lawn.
He thinks this is okay. Like he's made a joke about Rand Paul getting beat up. And look at this guy, right? And the audience, there's more here.
Now, as hilarious as that must have been to watch, violence against lawmakers is wrong, and his neighbor.
So think about what he's just saying here. He made a joke about Rand Paul getting beat up, and he's saying it's hilarious, but it's wrong. It was hilarious to watch. It would be hilarious to watch Rand Paul get beat up by his neighbor, but it's wrong to do violence against members of Capitol Hill. But it's only hilarious when it's done to Republicans and people like Rand Paul. It wouldn't be hilarious if anybody did to Nancy Pelosi. And if you think it's hilarious that Rand Paul got beat up and made a joke about it, then you're pro-violence. At least you can't claim to be victimized and do all this stuff that they're doing about what happened on Capitol Hill. Because you're not against the behavior. At least you think the behavior is funny.
Neighbor went to jail for 8 months, so we should be allowed to punish the president who sent Mad Max to overthrow the government.
So not only is this hypocrisy, but it's completely wrong. So what happened with Rand Paul was his neighbor, Rand Paul put some brush, like he cleared some brush in his yard and put it in his own yard but close to his neighbor's yard. And he had earphones on, like he was listening to music or something, and he was mowing his lawn. And this is, again, his neighbor, I think, is a doctor or something. Rand Paul is a doctor. This is wealthy people, right? Rand Paul lives in a rich neighborhood in Kentucky. He's a wealthy man. He's a a senator and also a a person of he's Ron Paul's son, and he's a doctor. And so this guy runs and tackles him from behind and breaks a number of Rand Paul's ribs. And Rand Paul eventually pushes him off of him. But the guy just came up and assaulted him, and which, of course, is a felony. And so what Donald Trump did, and I've said, I believe that Donald Trump completely betrayed his followers. I feel like he incited them in different ways, but it's not very clear, right? It's not very clear in terms of Donald Trump didn't run and tackle Nancy Pelosi from behind. I mean, this isn't like going up and squaring up with somebody and having a fair fight, which I'm not saying is okay. This guy tackles Rand Paul from behind and broke his ribs, like just ran at him, Rand Paul got pneumonia afterwards. Like he had to go to the hospital, like he was like messed up physically. And so Donald Trump clearly wanted to intimidate the politicians, including Mike Pence, and have his followers go up to Capitol Hill. But he didn't say go in and do violence. He didn't say, go do these things. And even if he did, it's not as bad as participating in it. I mean, certainly you could say he incited the crowd, and I believe that's a legitimate claim, but it's not nearly as bad. But more importantly, what Rand Paul introduced was saying that since Trump left office and because of some other factors in this thing, it's not constitutional to hold an impeachment. But this guy's saying, well, since Rand Paul got assaulted and his guy went to jail, we should be able to punish Donald Trump even if it goes against the Constitution.
But if Rand Paul wants violence, we could have Rand Paul fight Logan Paul. And that way, no matter who loses, America wins.
So 3 times he said that he is in favor of Rand Paul receiving a beatdown. In this, minute and a half segment, he is positive, he's encouraging, saying that Rand Paul getting a beatdown is a good thing. Then earlier in the show, when Kate McKinnon was interviewing the fake Marjorie Taylor Greene, at the beginning of the segment, Marjorie Taylor Greene offered her a gun, and then this happened at the end of the segment.
Okay, thanks for coming. So government doesn't work. And honestly, I regret not taking that gun.
So that joke is that she's implying that she wants to shoot Marjorie Taylor Greene. So think about this, because their whole case against Trump, the Democrats, the media, and Saturday Night Live's Trump impeachment case, what they're saying, the reason for Trump being impeached is that he has incited violence by putting out ideas, positive ideas, vague ideas, because he didn't say specifically that he wanted violence, but he did imply it, and he's wrong, and I've called Trump out on this in so many videos, and he betrayed his own people, set them up, and he fell into a trap. He got played and rolled. But think about what you just saw here. So 3 times this wimpy Colin Jost, right? I mean, he's just, not somebody that I would consider manly, is in himself inciting violence against Rand Paul. Like he's saying as a person on TV who has influence that Rand Paul getting beat up was funny. Like he made a joke about him getting beat up, assaulted, a crime was committed. He said it was hilarious. It would be hilarious to watch. And then he said that if Rand Paul wants violence, which Rand Paul never said he did, Rand Paul said that what Trump did was wrong on Capitol Hill. He admitted that Trump definitely encouraged these things, but Rand Paul said it was unconstitutional to impeach somebody who is no longer president. And the Democrats are going to lose because they don't have the Republican votes. And so it's just a formality. Trump isn't going to be impeached and it's just going to blow over. It's just a complete nothing burger. But Colin Jost, let's say one of Colin Jost's fans from Saturday Night Live, some deranged person watching Saturday Night Live, thinks it's funny or thinks that, it would be funny for him or other people to beat up Rand Paul, right? Because he's promoting these ideas the same way Trump did. I mean, this is the whole case that the Democrats have and the liberal media have and all these people have, is that, Trump incited violence and it's wrong, but they're wishing for violence in this Saturday Night Live sketch, in these two sketches on Rand Paul and Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? They're both, both these sketches are saying that violence against them would be funny and, that would be okay, right? And so they're claiming to be victims on one hand of Trump's incitement of these things that happened, on Capitol Hill. But on the other hand, they're claiming to be pro-violence against these Republicans, right? And that would be okay. And so, if you know my videos, I'm against force. I've talked about this before. Whenever you have force, there's always a counterforce. So whenever anything happens that involves force, it's going to come back around to the person that tried to impose their will forcefully. It's going to come back around at some point or another. And that's going to happen. That's why I don't worry about these things, because what goes around comes around. In terms of all these wrongs that people do, lying and cheating and bullying and all these things. I mean, everybody receives these things back at them on a spiritual level. You can't avoid it. And so using force will only bring force upon you. And so I'm against force. I'm against violence. I'm against protests. I've talked about these things. I mean, in terms of, well, if you have to defend yourself, that's something different. But in terms of first strike and, using force and violence in these things, I'm against. But you have a situation where the system is more and more rigged against people on the right. Like, that's something that's happening now. They're rigging it against Trump. They rigged the system against Trump in so many different ways and his followers. And then they didn't give them any outlet to express their frustrations by deplatforming all these people who were freaked out and outraged and felt cheated. And there was all this evidence that was given supporting their ideas, and that there was no way for this to be, brought through the system in some way about the election and Trump and all these things. And so they disenfranchised a large group of people. And one of the checks and balances in our system, when the system fails to have checks and balances, when they override all the checks and balances and they rig the system, and the media is no longer calling out one side of the government. You can say Fox News, but Fox News is sort of a shill organization, and there's a very narrow bandwidth of truth that the mainstream media covers. And so when the media fails to ask truthful questions and the deeper questions and things like this, right? And there's all this disinformation put out there, obscurantism and cover stories and things that are put out there in a way to block people from knowing what really happened. And when a group is being disenfranchised in that way, then there's one other check and balance, that's the fear of the mob, right? And this was literally written into the Constitution, the Founding Fathers, that there would always be some level of people power, right? So this is what rulers and controllers ultimately fear, that the mob's just going to go crazy, right? Go apeshit on them, and then come in and, and that happens, right? So that's something that this Capitol Hill riot was a reflection of that. And again, I'm not for it. I'm not promoting it. I'm not saying that's what should happen. But it's a part of the system in terms of checks and balances. When people believe that the system has completely been corrupted and rigged, and that all the avenues of dealing with that, legal avenues, which would be the court system and the voting system, then they have this other option, which is, turning into a mob and going after the leaders. And that's something the leaders globally fear, and rightfully so. And I'm not, justifying it or promoting it again. I'm not for it. I'm just saying that exists. And even these so-called passive liberals, or these people on the left that talk about being nonviolent, I mean, the jokes here on Saturday Night Live, like he's pro Rand Paul getting beat up, and he wants him to fight Jake Paul, which is just stupid. What, because their last names are the same? Like, that's not a joke. I mean, that's offensive to comedians. It's not a joke, and it goes against the truth of the situation, which is the left and corporate media, not just corporate media, but social media, big tech, are all rigging the system against one side. There's a binary system, and I'm beyond the binary system. I'm not a right-wing person. I'm not a Trump person. I'm somebody who looks at the left-right paradigm, but I can clearly see that they are trying to infuriate the right-wing people who have had, who for so many years were given preferences and privileges and things like this, who were a valued customer base, and now they've been turned on, right? And they are flipping out, and they're provoking them into acting out in these ways, and then they're crying victim, even though they themselves have violent tendencies. Like, they don't mind this huge military budget. The Democrats don't mind spending more than half of our resources on our military, and they don't mind when the Republicans are getting beat down, right? But they act like victims when they provoke something, and then, it happens. And now Saturday Night Live is literally promoting that victimization, that victim consciousness, at the same time wishing the same violent behaviors on Rand Paul and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like, think about how messed up that is, right? And it's not funny. Like, it's not comedy. Nothing there was worth laughing at. Those aren't even jokes. And it's just doing hit pieces on little people, right? The people who are on the other side of the stick. The people who are on the other side of the government and the beastly system. Saturday Night Live, which is supposed to be speaking truth to power, is literally shilling for the oppressor and doing it in completely unfunny terms. Like, in terms of, you're going to react, and whatever reaction it is, it's not going to be laughter and humor. It's not going to be something light. It's so bad that it bums you out, like drains your energy. They're these ghoulish, vampirish energy suckers that are supposed to be comedians, and they're completely failing. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.